Hello, awesome people! I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're taking a look at the third and final book in this first trilogy in the Corum cycle for you folks. It's called The King of the Swords for you folks. It's about 119 pages long. I read it in 2 days. The first day is about 2 hours, about a little bit less, more like an hour and 50 minutes, and the second day was an hour and 40 minutes. So I knocked it out in less than 4 hours. For you folks, it was a lot of fun stuff. You can easily knock it out in a day with you folks. It is the third book in the Corum series, and it introduces him in book 1 for you folks. And this is in the Eternal Champion series by Michael Moorcock, who was one of my favorite authors for a good long period of time. I did a deep dive into him, and I picked up this copy from Aurelius, which I'll link you to in the comments below in case you're interested in checking it out and haven't read it or heard of him before. The Eternal Champion series is basically a number of people that are on different planes fighting in the battles between law and chaos. Not good and evil, but law and chaos, although they certainly have that aspect to them as well. This was hugely influential on fantasy at the time, and still today. And one of the characters in the Eternal Champion series, Elric, and of Melanimity, and his sword, Stormbringer, are one of the biggest people of the era. So this is a big thing and a big aspect to folks. So let's go ahead and get started with my review of the King of Swords for you folks, which I again knocked out for going back and rereading it for about 2 days for you folks. So what happens in this book and so forth, what do I think of it? So let's get started. So as a reminder, I keep my review spoiler free, so I'll be doing a deep dive into it for you folks. But basically what's winding up is that Corum, who in the first book in the first couple of chapters, he is captured by men, the race on these 15 planes of in a sphere of the multiverse, a term created by Michael Moorcock, by the way, call themselves Mabden. And they kill all of his relatives, and he's in a race called the Vadhag, Corum is, and they cut off one of his eyes, they cut off his left hand, and they're going to remove the rest of his bodies, but he flees before they can do it, as he's the last of his race. And then those are replaced with the last aspects of gods that were brothers. And there are parts of them that were left behind, an eye and a hand for you folks. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, so what winds up happening, and those are replacements and so forth, and they up his power level considerably. And now in the third book, after defeating the Lords of Chaos in the first 2 books, the Knight of Swords and the Queen of Swords, he's now 10 planes have been moved from chaos to law in the battle in the sphere, and then now is a battle for the last 5 planes for the King of Swords. So the first, their main area starts to go in descent. People start to fight each other, start to think things about them and so forth. And we'll find out in chapter 3 that is actually a plot by one of the people that survived book 2 to kill all the survivors in this new world that's now dedicated to law, called the Cloud of Contention. It was given to him by a demon, and then it's done by a sorcerer who still survived and is an ally of chaos, who wants to destroy all of the law folks that are still left that have won the battle for that folks. So anyway, so that is now the inciting incident, to try to find out who this person is and to stop it, and so forth. So that's the inciting incident then for this book for you folks. So there you are. So what do I think about it? The previous 2 I gave 8s to. This guy's a classic guy, right? Won lots of awards. He's a classic guy. One of the biggest hits of his generation in Elric of Melanimity, and the Sword of Stormbringer, which is probably more famous than Elric. One of the most famous swords in fantasy for you folks. And in fact, there was a version of it called Black Razor in Dungeons & Dragons. Anyway, so what do I think about this book? So I'm probably going to be giving this probably like an 8-2, the same I gave the previous 2. I don't give 8s commonly, but this guy, he's earned it. Anyway, so I'm going to be giving this one an 8-2 out of it for you folks. As a reminder, the channel's name, The Worst Thing About New Books, was a quote by a French philosopher named Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books was that they kept us from reading the old ones. And this is definitely an old book that's decades and decades old again. for you folks. Again, I purchased this collection, this trilogy, read it when I was in high school and reading a lot of Michael Moorcock stuff because that's when he was my favorite author for you folks. So pretty good stuff for you folks. There is another trilogy of Corum works that I'll be heading to next, of another 3 books. His stuff tends to be pretty fast to read because it doesn't have a whole lot of pages. I read this whole trilogy, this big giant collection, in 7 days. 3 days for the first one, because it was 150 pages, 50 pages a day, and then the last 2 were under 120. So I did 60 pages a day, knocked out the last 2 in 4 days total. He's fast, you can easily knock him out pretty quickly for you folks. I enjoyed it. He doesn't have, his chapters don't tend to be very long. There's a lot of things that happen. It's dense. A lot of epic things happen for you folks. The Eternal Champion aspects of this are definitely locked in the third book. You'll definitely see that aspect in it here too. So there you are. So I mentioned earlier how influential he is today. For example, the chaos versus law aspect that changed for a while in fantasy. It overplaced the good versus evil of J.R.R. Tolkien. That was his central conceit. This war between good and evil in the world of Middle Earth. And then in early fantasy, for example, in Dungeons & Dragons, its first edition, it has law versus chaos as its central battlefield aspect for you folks. And then the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons that came out in first edition adds and layers on top of the law versus chaos that was already in it a good versus evil contingent. And so law versus chaos and good versus evil are aspects that are in modern fantasy, even through to this day. For you folks. He also created this idea of this giant pan-planar battle between law versus chaos thing. You see pan-planar combats in modern fantasy fiction too. Anyway, so there you are. I'll go ahead and leave it to it. He's definitely an influential person for you folks. So have you read The King of the Swords? If so, what do you think about it? Do you agree or disagree with my 8 out of 10? If so, let's talk about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video, because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.